Hi guys, John here, Common Sense Outdoors. So we're at the river today, playing around, hanging out. I have a piece of paper with a bunch of notes on it I took. Oh, by the way, there's a really nice rapid in the background back there. I wanted to stay far enough away from it that you can hear me over the water. And the other thing is it's pretty windy. Hey, Rox. It's pretty windy out here at the moment, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me. Oi. Oi. You say hi to the nice people. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about, if you can tell by the title, that the show that came out recently called Naked Castaway with Ed Stafford on Discovery Channel. I really enjoyed the show, but at the same time there's a lot of things that we can learn by watching it, from the do's and the don'ts. So not that I'm trying to discredit anything when I talk about the don'ts or the ways that things could have been done better, because for Ed to do what he did at 60 days on an island with absolutely nothing, that's an ultimate test of skills right there, and I tip my hat to him for doing it. A couple of things that the show really showed, as most survival shows do show, is, you know, people say you can go 3 weeks without food. That's part of the 3 weeks without food. But in a survival scenario, just like in Ed's situation on the island, you have to have food. Your energy and your will to do anything starts to diminish within 2 or 3 days. So to say the rule of threes and 3 weeks without food isn't so true, isn't it that accurate? And the other thing that it really showed, and there's been a couple of shows out there that show, to be isolated for that long by yourself and the loneliness really has a mental aspect. You have to be mentally strong, very strong. I mean, the challenges, the people are meant to be social. The human race is a social race. They need to interact with other people at some point. So let's start to talk about some of the things that were really good that he did with his 60 days. I mean, again, just the guts and the skill to do it, to put himself to the test, is just amazing. The shelter that he built was fantastic for his situation. I say for his situation because of the warm climate that he was in. Had it been a cold weather scenario, that shelter wouldn't have worked. It was too tall, too big. You can't keep any heat in. But the way he weaved the palm branches and his shelter was awesome. He did a good job. It took him a long time to do it, but it was nice. Another thing that I really liked that he did was when he found the plants that were producing a potato-like vegetable, instead of going to find those plants or going out to where those plants were every time he wanted to get some carbs and starch into his system, he took those plants and gardened them, basically. So he put them in some good soil in a spot where he knew exactly where they were, and he took care of them. So then when he needed that food, he just had to go get it. So basically he was gardening. That was an excellent skill and thing to do. Along with the shelter, towards the end of the show when he added the water catch system onto his shelter with the bamboo and the container and also a piece of plastic pipe. That was brilliant. A water catch system like that in a survival scenario. Yes, he was there long enough to make that happen. I mean, it's not everywhere you're going to go out in the woods and be able to do that. But for his situation, that water catch system was extremely smart. Now, being on an island, he had an advantage to the fact that there was always stuff coming ashore, floating in with the tide. But his uses of trash items, basically, collecting bottles and containers and his use of trash, I think it was a piece of an outboard motor that he eventually used to sharpen into a blade. The use of what you can find trash-wise was excellent. Along the lines of the water bottle situation, he had quite a few. Now, had he got the water catch system sooner, he wouldn't have depended on all those water bottles to hold his water, which he made a fish trap out of one of the bottles. Now, as soon as you're not dependent on being able to contain water with all those containers, I would make every one of those bottles into fish traps and have them all out working for me all the time, collecting my food for me so I didn't have to go get it. Let's talk about some of the things, and I'm not saying they were bad things or things that he'd done wrong, but things that could have been done better with his same situations and what he had. Again, the fish trap with the bottle, he needed more of those working for him. Another thing is, okay, the goat he finally ends up getting, which coincidentally was tangled up in some vines. If the goat could accidentally get tangled up in those vines, why didn't he try right off the bat to use those vines to catch a goat? He did try to make a bow and an arrow, and that was okay, but that all takes energy and time, and you have to go hunt that goat. If you can rig a way to catch that animal without having to go spend your time to do it, it frees you for other tasks. So along that lines, some sort of snares with the vines. I realize there may have been rules to what he could and couldn't do on the island, but all the time you could hear birds in the background chirping. He never targeted the birds. I mean, his resources around him were vast, with all the life in the ocean, in the reef, with the goats and the birds, but he never targeted the birds. So if you have more fish traps out of the bottles working for you. Oh, and by the way, the tide pool trap that he made by blocking off the tide pool so fish will get trapped behind it, that was also brilliant. So along with the tide pool trap and the bottle trap, if you had more bottle traps and you had snares and you targeted the birds, it didn't say anything about whether there was any small game such as mice or rats or anything that you could have targeted with deadfall traps or anything to that effect. But my point on it is, if you become in a survival situation, you have to target everything that you can. You have to have the water bottle traps out. You have to have the tide pool trap. You have to have the snares out. You have to target the birds. If there's any small game at all, you have to do the deadfalls. You set all of them up and use them all at the same time. You're going to be way more guaranteed to be eating good, and they work for you. You don't have to put in the effort. You just have to go collect whatever you catch. Far too often, the survival shows will target one thing. Okay, I've come up with a way to fish. I'm going to try to catch a fish. or I've come up with a way to snare or a way to use a deadfall, I'm going to use that one option, and if I get something, I get to eat. And if I don't get to eat. If you have an option for every animal that you can possibly go after working for you all at the same time, your chances of eating are way higher. Next thing that I want to talk about that he could have done better is cutting tools. Cutting tools are extremely important, and yes, he did end up making a workable blade once he got the piece from the boat motor. There had to be a rock that would nap where he was. He should have been able to make rock blades. In fact, when he sharpened the piece of the motor to make a blade out of it, what did he? It was some sort of volcanic rock that he was sharpening it on. So if there's volcanic rock, there's got to be something that's nappable. Even if it's not the perfect rock and you can bust it and get a good edge, a rock hand axe would have worked much better than the clamshell that he was chopping down trees with. As far as chopping down the trees with a clamshell goes, the one big tree that he chopped down, well, not big, but good sized pole that he needed to support the middle of his shelter, it took him a long time to get that tree down, chopping on it every day. A little bit of common sense gets that tree down for you without all that effort and time. Had he built a small fire around the base of that tree and made some clay or some mud and coated the tree with it as thick as he could, a couple feet up the tree, he could have burnt that tree off without all that effort. So you could have either done easier with a hand axe made from a rock, or you could have burnt the tree down. He spent way too much time with that clamshell on that tree. Granted, you're in a situation, and whatever you think of, you're going to think, I can do this and this is my best idea, but rethink everything you come up with. Is that the best way I can do it, or can I find something else that'll help me? Another thing I think was a mistake per se is when he builds the raft to try to go out to the reef further. He didn't need to be out there. That was, when you're in a survival situation, you have to make calculated risks. You have to decide if you want to risk what you're risking for the reward you're trying to get. Now, to go out there deeper into the reef where he could have fell off, there could have been a shark issue, you know, it's a calculated risk. But the biggest one is if you get out there and the tide just keeps pulling you away from land. So now you have to bail off your raft and swim back to shore through that shark-infested water. I don't think it was a good risk to take. Maybe had the raft been built wide enough that it could be, he could have stood up on it and had a 12 or 15 foot bamboo pole for a push pole. He could have controlled the direction. You could have also taken something and made an anchor so that you could get out to the area, throw in a container full of rocks or whatever as an anchor to hold you there so that you could fish instead of getting pulled around. You get out there and the current's pulling you around or pulling you out. You don't have time to stop, catch fish, or spear fish if you're fighting with staying where you want or going where you want the whole time. So a push pole and an anchor on a raft that you could have stood on, your risks drop dramatically. But you didn't really need to be out there to begin with. You had plenty to survive from the beach and on the island. Another thing that really surprised me was when he finally made a bed. Okay, a great bed to get comfortably off the ground, off the ground from the cold. Granted, the ground probably wasn't that cold in the tropical situation. I hope you guys can hear me, the wind's picking up. But just to get off the ground, get off where the creepy crawlies or whatever's on the ground is. But more importantly, to be comfortable. In a survival situation, food and rest for energy. If you're sleeping on a rock and you're not sleeping worth a darn and you're not getting any rest, it's just going to drain you dramatically. Along with the fact that you're not eating very good, just downhill really fast. So the bed was a great idea, but he got it made on day 57 out of 60. So he had 3 nights of good sleep on a bed. That should have been way higher up the priority list to making sure he was getting good rest and not just draining himself even further by not sleeping good. You know, it's something so simple. It didn't take him long to make it, from what I gathered off the show. And the importance of rest is just far too high not to have done it way sooner. You know, that's pretty much the notes I took off the show. The other thing to realize is that he had help at the push of a button or a call, which I understand that. And he did have to use antibiotics twice to make it through that 60 days. And I'm not discrediting him for that. He shouldn't have to be out there making the show while bringing his guys out and being sick. But it makes you think, could he have done it without the antibiotics, or would he have got really sick? You know, so for me, myself, or you, we go out and get in that same scenario and we don't have the antibiotics on call. That adds a whole nother aspect to the game. I guess the last thing I'll leave you with is the importance of a few items, and that's why we're all talking about kits and what you should have with you. Because if you take Ed Stafford in his same scenario on the same island in same situations, and you give him a ferro rod, a knife, and a tarp, everything he did in 60 days could have been done in about 3. So the fact that he had nothing, it took him quite a while to establish to a self-sustainability. Whereas 3 simple items, a piece of plastic, a cutting tool, and a fire method, would have taken about 57 days of struggle out of getting to the point of being self-sustainable. Alright guys, well, you know, I did a search. I figured there might be people talking about this show and whatnot, and I couldn't find anything, so I thought I'd talk about it and get it out there, and I'd love to hear what you think about it if you watched the show. It was a great show. If you haven't watched the show, go find it on Discovery. They keep playing it over. Lately they have been anyway. It was a good show. You can learn, like I said, learn a lot from the do's and the don'ts, the positives and the things that could have been done differently to make it even easier. So check it out. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth the watch. And if you have seen it, let's talk about it. Let me know what you think. Alright guys, so like I say, we're out the river today playing. I'm going to probably do a couple more videos out here, get some different scenery to some of my videos. There's a couple of things I've been wanting to do at water, so we'll get out of here and do a couple more videos for you, and we'll see you in the next one.